Yeah, and I've said to him, there's a service that will move the bees without killing them. And he said, okay. I said, look, pursue that option. Don't just kill them, relocate them.
Well, that's our panacea for everything, isn't it? We just get killed, right?
Well.
And the thing is, I understand this is critical. We've been killing pests.
Right.
And they're becoming immune to the poisons we're using because they have such a shorter lifestyle.
That's right.
And then, but we're not. We're still dying from the poisons.
Well, yeah, but it's hard to, you know, all of us love tuna. I love tuna, you know, but the higher up the food chain you get, the more mercury is concentrated. So we're all, you know, you should eat smaller.
Is that from pesticides?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the source of that mercury is. But the point there is if you're going to eat fish, you're better eating the smaller ones than the larger ones. And so a tuna, being a relatively large fish, has got more mercury that is collected than a salmon, for example.
So in other words, we are more at risk to
eat the larger
the poisons
fish.
or even just the poisons from our pesticides that we spray on our crops.
Sure.
And I guess there are other ways to control pests besides just spraying them with with pesticides.
Well, sure, you can
vary your crops, I understand, you know. You don't have to plant a whole row of potatoes. You can vary it up.
Right. And I can't remember, there's also a technique for making the females infertile in some way. I can't remember that, without actually using pesticides, so that they continue to mate but they don't produce.
Okay,
I mean, there are alternatives.
I read your chapter online, and I really like the part about the population control. I want to hear. I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
Okay, but I have to really be careful because the religious community will go crazy over this.
It's your idea.
But imagine that you, with a lot of scientific research, that you could develop an absolutely harmless contraceptive agent that proved to have no bad side effects at all. And you put it in the water supply so that as long as people are drinking water, they're not able to conceive. But for absolute free, at the corner drugstore are antidote tablets. And so if you want to take the responsibility of creating human life, you merely have to walk down, take your antidote tablets, and get pregnant, okay? And it turns the enormous responsibility of creating a human being into a positive act rather than a kind of an accident, if you understand what I mean. So that you say, you know,
How many do you think are created by accident? Do you think that's a great percentage?
Geez. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably well over half. It's probably, what, 80%, wouldn't you say?
I
haven't looked that up. But certainly, look, you have to pass a bunch of tests to drive a car, right, to get a license. Isn't the responsibility of creating a human life, that must outweigh the responsibility of driving an automobile 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. Yet there are no requirements at all. Just get pregnant and have the kid, right?
It's about the easiest thing to do, isn't it?
That's right. But if you had to say, look, we want to create this human life and we're going to be responsible for it. Let's go get the antidote tablets, okay? But this would never happen. The religious organizations would go crazy. The Republicans would go crazy. Everybody would stop it.
How about this idea? This is my idea.
Okay.
Okay, you go and you actually offer money to people to voluntarily spay and neuter them, whatever the equivalent is, spay and neuter themselves.
Well, okay, but there's
that would be a permanent thing, and then probably the people that would be willing to take it would probably, you know.
Well, someone else had a proposal, which is sort of the economic capitalistic proposal, which is when a woman reaches maturity, like 18 or some level, she is given for free. Let's say this was when zero population growth used to be 2.3. She's given 2 blue slips and 3 pink slips. And they can be sold on the open market, okay? And they basically allow you to have 2.3 children or so. Now, if
2 blue and 2 pink?
Well, the 2 is, the blue chips are whole babies and the pink ones are tenths of babies, right? Okay. And so you trade these. I mean, to make it simple, suppose you only have 2 children, you'd have 2 blue slips. And basically,
what happens if you get pregnant and you're out of your slips?
Well, I don't want to go there. But
they forced abortion?
This was proposed by someone else who was afraid to take on the answer to that question. But at least if someone, the thought there was that by trading these slips, on balance, you would keep the Earth at an even population. Now you could say, well, the poor people that have to sell their blue slips for money are going to allow someone who's wealthier to have 4 children and they can't have any. And you can say, well, maybe that's not fair. But that's still, they're not made to do that. That's a choice. They can keep their slips, have their 2 children. But if times are really desperate, you know, maybe they sell a slip and they eventually get a job and they can buy the slip back or what have you.
Oh,
but
okay.
that was a proposal that was around a few years ago. Well, no.
Okay, so we talked about the animals going extinct. Now, I guess there is a plant extinction too, right?
Well, yeah, everything is happening, but I'd like to though get. Well, let me talk about trees.
Let's talk about
global warming is kind of the big subject, okay? But as you know, I care about not just global warming, but everything else, extinction of species and so forth. Now, there's a thing known as carbon footprint, and it's more than just when you breathe, you exhale carbon dioxide. But when you buy an SUV, the factory that made it is running all this equipment. They are also generating carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide,
the mining process too, that's just
it's a greenhouse
very
gas.
detrimental on
It's a
the
greenhouse gas, just like on Venus. The Venus atmosphere is primarily carbon dioxide, and the temperature of the surface of Venus is 800 or 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hot enough to melt lead. So if you put more and more carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere, it warms up. Now people say, in fact I saw a show by Jesse Ventura that said that global warming was a conspiracy. This is absurd. All you have to do is look at photographs of glaciers around the world taken in 1850 and today. And over 90% of them have receded. They are melting, okay? That's a fact. Just look at the pictures. Okay?
I think the debate is pretty much out on global warming, isn't it?
Okay,
the verdict is in. It's real and it's happening.
Yeah, it is. Well, except that many members of the Republican Party don't want to acknowledge it. But here's where I'm headed with this. If the average North American and all the things they do in terms of their cars and their TV sets and flying from here to there and so forth, if you calculate the total carbon dioxide release that they cause to happen, it's 20 metric tons per year per person in North America. All right.
That's some kind of carbon dioxide.
It is.
Wow.
But now suppose you said, well, I'll just put a tree farm next to each person, and I'll have these mature adult trees absorb that carbon dioxide, absorb it, convert it back to oxygen. You would need 1,000 mature trees for each North American to compensate.
Per year or per lifetime?
Well, you need those trees. You need the trees there continuously to absorb the 20 metric tons annually. Okay.
And we're really deforesting
But what are we doing?
Uh-huh.
We're taking down tropical forests at 2 football fields per second. Now here's the scary thing about this. Recently, I had a congressman show me some legislation that he wanted to write, and I was excited because it was called the Tropical Forest Emissions Act. And I said, yay. So I read it. I couldn't believe it. The first paragraph said, as a result of a recommendation from a committee of retired generals and admirals, we think it's important to try to save the tropical forest as a matter of national security. I thought, why couldn't this have been a committee of environmentalists and scientists? And his response was, it's hard to get anything by the Congress, and he meant largely the Republican Party, unless it's connected to security. We're using security in the name of everything, you know, to sort of.
How much do we spend on the defense budget?
$700 billion a year.
What could we do with that money?
Well, there's a great naturalist